Hi, everyone, and welcome to the final episode of Asura's Bride, episode 11, which has no title, but I'll invent a title or will invent a title. And we have Tina and Vita here, so say hi.
Hello, hello.
Hey, I'm Vita.
I'm Tina, even though it says 18452.
I don't know if that actually shows up on the video. I feel like sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But anyway, so we are doing the last episode of Asura's Bride, and it's interesting because we've never done the last episode of any other story yet on the podcast. So, you know, given our wide sample of 2 stories, but so yeah, so we're gonna finish this story up. Crazy. So, last episode ended with a rendezvous between our 2 main characters, Tora and not Tora.
They look alike, but
yeah, and Yuwa, who had clashes, had their doubts, had their suspicions, but then reunited in a grand display of love. And now we learn about what happens next. And we have a narration that same night amid the battle cries of the northern soldiers. And this episode is in black and white. And we see the people on the guard tower, and seems like snow is falling again, and the promise of impending bloodshed. And now we see Yuwa and Ulaan embracing. And we see his crew in the back, his soldiers, his army, standing there with their battle flags, about to head off into battle. This is like the classic, you know, goodbye before battle moment. They're hugging each other, not knowing if they'll ever see each other again, if they'll come back alive or dead. And she said that he asked if I would stay with him. And we have this blacked out flag panel. And I feel like it's just a reminder that, you know, this is the enemy's flag. And he's asking her, the enemy, will you stay with me? So it's more of an impactful moment. And she says, I would. Not surprised. And she watches them run off. And then Ulaan looks back. He has this beautiful jewelette, something on his forehead. He's looking back at her. He smiles, and then in faded out letters it says, wait for me. And it's just so beautiful. It's even more beautiful that it's faded out, because then you can know it's far away. It's faint and silent, but she still hears him.
Yeah.
He's so gorgeous. I'm sorry. It's just he's even in black and white, like it's just the panels are so beautiful.
And then can we just take a pause with the panel where he has no nose? Like,
yeah,
I love it because it reminds me of Tora and No Nose Tora.
No Nose
like,
Tora.
More than that, you can see like the difference in just the little eye squints, where it's such a warm, you know, he's feeling like warm and tender right now. And it's like, come on, Lily, why do you have to be that good at drawing?
He looks so happy in that panel where he says, wait for me. Like, it's just like, it looks like he finally has something to come home to. You know, like, as opposed to like, you know, like he's just this king and he's doing everything that he's supposed to be doing. It's just like now he has a reason to come home. And like how you can convey that much warmth in someone's eyes when it's a black and white photo is just amazing.
And actually, if you look at Yuwa, it's like the expressions are almost reversed, where you see her like that little smile, it's like putting on a brave face, and then you scroll down a little bit more and it's like she doesn't know, she hopes she comes back, but you can see the uncertainty in her eyes. Like, it's so interesting. You have like the unknown in her eyes, and you have this hopeful expression in his. And I think that parallel is just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a great point. Yeah, there's so much tenderness between them. It's so beautiful to see how literally probably like a day or 2 ago, you know, they were alone in the world, and now they have someone. They have the special someone. That makes all the difference. So he rides off on his horse So your majesty is goes off, and like you said, her face crashes down. She says, and that was the last I saw of him. Oh, you see her just standing there alone, huddled with her cloak and the snow falling. And it's just, again, this beautiful image showing, she's much smaller. Lily's making these great choices where, instead of being zoomed in, we see her zoomed out, and there's tons of empty space around her. And that just highlights how small and alone she is. And she's in this enemy camp. She doesn't know what's going to happen. Her lover goes away. For all she knows, she may not even be well treated after he leaves. Like, she doesn't know the people around her. Sad. And it gets even sadder because we hear weeks later, word came in that they had lost the battle at 𝗪𝗁, his civilian city, badly. Following the defeat, soldiers from my kingdom came to take me back home, while soldiers from Qianli raided and burnt down the camp. We see an image of a soldier grabbing her and taking her home, but she doesn't want to go, and she's crying. And it's such a contrast from the last time. Like, when she left her home, she was anxious. She thought she was going to come back, but she probably couldn't have predicted that she would have to be dragged kicking and screaming back to her own home.
Yeah.
Her perspective has completely changed in the time that she left.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful how Lily was able to illustrate someone falling in love and having that reciprocal love in literally just a couple of days. And you can tell that she's heartbroken right now. Like, the tears coming down her eyes, like she didn't want to leave. Like, she wanted to wait there until he came back, even though they're telling her that he's gone.
Yeah, and that's what she just tells us. As I asked around for news on King Asura, the replies I received were all the same. He had died in the battle. And there's a close-up of her face, just tears streaming down her face. She's yelling, she's resisting, just heartbreaking. I mean, this is the worst. By the way, how many of you thought he was actually dead when you read this?
So I knew that I had read, okay, so I had read MPL first. Like, I had found MPL first, and then I was just like, this is great. Like, I need more. So I
Oh no. Did she cut out?
Yeah. But hopefully we'll get her again.
found Asura's bride. And I had his, oh no. Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, sorry. I had found out that Lily had said that they were his ancestors. So when this happened, I was praying that it wasn't that, like, Yuwa was just pregnant,
right?
And I was just like, oh no, like, I actually did think that he might have passed away. I hoped not, but yeah.
What did you think by then?
Yeah, I didn't think he was dead.
Yeah. I don't remember what I thought back then, honestly, but reading it now, I'm like, this is going to end on a good note. I have this very bad habit of thinking everything will end well. I'm an optimist by nature. I'm like, of course they'll have true love. And whenever I read a tragedy or watch a tragedy, I know in advance it's going to be a tragedy. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I know things are going to end badly, but in general, I always think things will be good. So I'm like, yeah, of course this is a romance. They'll end up in love.
Yep. I feel like it's been a really long time when I'm reading a book and I'm like, oh, this is such a happy little rom-com. And then it's like, no, bam, everyone dies at the end. So my default is just because of that trend that it's happy. So the few where it actually happens, I'm like bawling for an hour afterwards.
Yeah.
And it's usually well done. Like, sorry, I just thought of like 3 other books in my head. We don't have to deviate.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's my default. It's like you were saying, Mindy, like, it's just, this is gonna be happy ending.
Yeah, that's it. It's very much my perspective on life. I'm like an optimist in general. So yeah,
I mean, it's a good perspective to have. I've read too many books where like they'll be like series books where it'll be like happy devastation, and I'll just be like, no. So this, I was just like, please don't do this to me.
Yeah. I think we have just slightly different preferences in like at least series books, because the series books I read, they're usually happy. Usually.
No, they're usually happy. I had a couple of books where it was just like knife to the chest, and I was just like, why would you do this? But yeah, they were well done, and eventually they get their happy ending. But still, like,
Oh, good.
it's just I was hoping that that wasn't the case for her, and I'm happy that it ends well.
Yeah, but meanwhile, poor her. She is back in her kingdom. Now we see several months later at a lake near the Shan Kingdom Palace. We see a bunch of maidens washing their clothes at the river. It looks like Yuwa is approaching. And they're like, oh, Princess Yuwa, laundry. Princess, you mustn't. And again, this is interesting. It shows us that she's not stuck up. She's not a snob. She pitches in, not surprised. And I wonder if her experience changed her, or I'm pretty sure she was like that before. And now it looks like she hasn't really interacted with people for a while, because the maidservants are saying, you haven't allowed anyone in your compound for months. Your Highness, are you fine? 𝗙𝗍 was so worried about you. And so it looks like she hasn't really interacted with them. And they say that the guards said that most of the maids had left because of the war. I'm feeling better now, so let me help. You'll wear yourselves out in no time. Interesting, right? So the maids are gone, so she has to pitch in. It was just, you know, wonderful of her. Sorry. And she's like, why are you staring at me? What's wrong? And they're, you know, curious maids, which is, by the way, a role. Speaking of, you said Sub-Zero, curious maids are a big role in Sub-Zero. So that's like a thing in palaces. And they say, there's something we'd like to ask you. When you were gone, us servants were told that you were abducted by bandits, the ones 𝗙𝗍 escaped from. But when the soldiers brought you back, you were so distraught they could barely restrain you. And we have this image of her staring out of her abode, just into, like, where there's a tree. She's looking in the distance. She looks very, very depressed. And they say you were like an empty shell for weeks, barely eating and drinking, just staring into a distance in a haze, which is so sad to hear her being described this way.
Yeah.
Sad, but appropriate, because she just lost the love of her life. She thinks he's dead. Someone she just had for like one night, and they had this great love, and it's gone. And it's, in ways, it's even harder, because, you know, if you're with someone for a while, you learn their flaws, right? You know, and you're like, you know, you get to see their bad side. But here she just had this one love. It was this promise. She didn't even have to have a chance to have an actual relationship, and it was gone and taken from her before it could even start.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's interesting too. I just wanted to point out that there's no leaves on the tree. Like, I think that's just another, like, she's staring out and just touching back on like the themes of loneliness and isolation. This is like another one that's just death, you know, when you're in the winter, fall. So really she is in her darkest moments, and she doesn't have any hope. And I think the fact that she's looking at the tree really symbolizes that.
I think that's amazing. Like, I never even picked up on that. Like, but I think you're so right, because it signifies like time passing, but it also signifies the fact that her life is barren right now. Like, she just, it seems like there's no life in her life. But wait, there's more.
What's the next season?
After winter comes
spring.
Yeah, exactly. And leaves start growing. There's new life. Is that a foreshadowing?
Imagine that this is happening in March right now, because like I'm totally feeling the just the chaos of the weather right now.
Yeah.
It's so mercurial.
Yeah. Well, I started gardening again today, and I bought I went to the store and I bought, guess which plant I bought a lot of.
Was it poppies?
Poppies?
I looked for poppies. They didn't have red poppies. They had blue poppies, so I bought them anyway. And then what else did I buy?
Tiger lilies.
No, I did not.
No?
I don't like lilies. I never have liked
Oh,
lilies.
okay.
No.
Sorry.
They're my favorite flower.
Tulips?
No, they're like bushy and they're big and they're a bush.
Hydrangeas?
Oh, what?
Hydrangeas?
No.
The high
Hyacinths, yep.
That is
I
not
bought
what I
a
was
lot
gonna
of purple
say.
hyacinths.
Oh, I'm forgetting my favorite flower.
Azaleas, rhododendrons.
No.
Peonies?
Peonies.
Yes.
Peonies are personally my favorite flower.
Peonies.
They're so pretty.
I thought
have-
I thought you were gonna say peony because it's like the tattoo that tore
Yeah,
into
I
it.
have
Yeah.
I have a bunch of PDs planted already, and they didn't come up last year, so I kind of neglected the garden and I planted like tons of stuff, and then I let all the weeds grow. But anyway, I do have like 10 peonies planted, and hopefully they'll grow this year. So anyway, divergence. I get very excited, and I got like just tons of flowers, and I spent like all week planting everything, and then I just lost patience to like actually maintain it. But this year I'm like promising myself that I'm gonna maintain it and make it look nice. So
If you cut peonies before the bulb expands and you put them in the fridge, you can have peonies in your house all year round, because they kind of, when you take them out, they'll bloom. Like you just leave them in your fridge.
okay, I'll look that up.
Oh, I know that.
But anyway, so hopefully I'll have a very webtoon themed garden, because I'll have peonies and purple hyacinths, and I don't have lilies because I don't like lilies. Maybe I should plant some.
That's fine. Well, I just said it because it was tiger lilies, and
Yeah.
Tori's a tiger.
No, I did. I did have tiger lilies last year. I don't know if they grew. I don't know, because of whatever. It was such a mess. But I did remember planting them. So anyway, if they bloom, I'll take pictures. But I guess let's go back to the webtoon. So we hear that the maids say the grand advisor said it was just a head injury, but to us handmaidens, it seemed like something else. So they're not stupid. You can't pull the wool over their eyes. They got the girl perception. They're like, oh,
Yeah, they're like, we know.
You know.
Oh. And they are super gossipy, because they're like, see, your highness, rumor has it you were actually taken by a northern soldier back to his camp. So what we wanted to ask, is he really how the northern soldiers are said to be like? And they're blushing. And it's like, okay, what have you heard about northern soldiers?
Look at her face. Look at Yuwa's face. She's just like, ugh.
She's like, is she really asking what I think she's asking?
Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah.
I think she's also surprised that like a rumor is going around that she was taken by a northern soldier, because I'm pretty sure her family wants to keep that under wraps as much as possible. So she's just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Hide stuff like that. I do not think, and I mean, the truth always comes out. I don't think it's ever possible to keep secrets.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it
they're
could
like,
be a reason why too she hasn't left the house or even been allowed, if the parents think that she's I don't know, like lost her virginity, like not pure anymore, to use like the really old colloquial terms.
interesting, yeah. Maybe. So these girls, this is what they heard. They're like, oh, barbaric, of course, ferocious and savage and strong. So very strong. Oh, you know what they're thinking. They're like, their king is said to be able to take down 5 men with the blow of a sword. He has a reaching temper like a bull. Some say his eyes are fiery red. And like, oh God, these girls, they're so funny. And she has this image of King Asura in the back, and then she just mutters, she's like, being sleep deprived really does that to you. I'm like, what was that, your highness? Nothing. Anyway,
so funny.
Vita, do you want to take over from here?
Yeah, sure. So I just love her deadpan expression. Like,
Right?
yeah, even though she believes that he's dead, she can still kind of like tease his personality. It's like, yeah, why are we romanticizing red eyes? He just doesn't sleep, and just being really frank about it. I love it. And then she says, no, nothing, when the maid kind of overhears a little bit. He was just some soldier who happened to pass by, that's all. He didn't manhandle you,
Yeah.
did he?
Yeah, he did.
Manhandle.
Old too. And then our girl Uwa says, only briefly, but I tried to escape. And then the maids are like, what a pity. And then the other was like, what do you mean, what a pity? You're a traitor. So brazen. Don't speak so brazenly of the enemy. I think that just shows really well how gossipy girls can be. To be fair though, guys are really gossipy too. They just hide it better, and they just say that they're not, and they're just liars.
My husband is a very big gossip. So like my husband and his friends, I do not gossip like they do. They, yeah.
I work with mostly men. I find out the gossip from them. Like I'll be out of work for like 2 days, and I'll be like, hey, and they'll be like, hey, did you hear what happened? I'm like, no, what happened? They know all the gossip. Yeah. I think it's funny that these two girls in this moment, when she's like, oh, what a pity, that's literally Lily Dusk's fandom, like right there. Like we're just like, oh, really? Like I feel like in that moment, like I felt such camaraderie with these maids. I was just like, yeah, like I'm sorry. Yeah, she's one of us.
All right, look, they might have conquered our kingdom. This is the one that sims for the enemy, by the way.
Mhm.
They might have conquered our kingdom, but their king has been nothing but kind to us.
You notice, by the way, that girl has like drool coming out of her mouth?
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
I noticed it.
Oh, sorry. I should have said that after you said their line. Sorry.
No, you're good. And then the other girl, again, deadpan expression. You're only saying that because he's apparently a total stud muffin. Like those, like Lily is just like really nailing it home when she uses literally 21st century language in historic era period piece, and it's just, it makes it funnier for that reason. And then the girl who is a little thirsty, well, that too, never seen him before, but everyone swears that he is, so for her I guess it doesn't take much. She just needs an imagination.
Good for her. Maybe she'll be the next webtoon artist in that world. She'll do the smut work for everybody.
And then Uwa is like, the king conquered. She starts to say conquered, and then you see her kind of like perk up, where she realizes like, oh, maybe there's some more information that I don't know of. Their king conquered our kingdom? What are you talking about? It was your father's orders not to tell you because you were in such a bad state. Please forgive us. And then the maid again with the little bun says, while you were resting in your compound these last few months, the Northern Army made a recovery after their defeat at the 𝗪𝗟𝗃 kingdom. They destroyed 𝗪𝗏 and allianced kingdoms. It was brutal but swift. Miraculously, Princess Yujin was sent back to us by the Northern soldiers. And here we kind of have a map of the entire region. Some of the key places are highlighted in red. This includes Ulaan's camp, where they, were just last chapter, the kingdom, and a couple of the kingdoms as well. And not only was our Shan kingdom spared from the bloodbath, your father was even allowed to retain his status as the king of Shan. And then we have kind of like,
shows like right away, I'm like, yeah, he's definitely alive, because he's the one who orchestrated that, the sister should be sent back unharmed. He's still the king. Her kingdom is unharmed. Definitely the match, the work of a loving lover.
I wonder too if Lily drew the map. Like she must have, right?
Yeah, she must have.
That's
and
really cool.
It does look like a traditional old Asian map, like, because like the mountains have like those like, they're like very similar to, like, I watch like a lot of like old like kung fu movies, and like it looks like it. It's, I think this whole webtoon, like the fact that she did it and it's so short, like the detail that she was able to put in it is amazing.
And it's interesting too, because it maps out, I'm like staring at it now. It actually maps out Uwa's original route, and then where it got interrupted by the bandits. I didn't realize she had put that in there. That's really cool.
Yep. It is. It's very
cool. They have the lake too. It's almost like here.
I think that's
a view of what we went through.
Yep. So that's the lake. That's the white lake where they were like resting. You have like the bandits that you have 𝗪𝗏 down here, like where Ulaan ended up going and like lost. And it even says like battleground. So like that was the 𝗪𝗏 kingdom, and like that's the battleground. It's so cool.
It's really cool. The detail's amazing. So then now we have Uwa going tap, 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 running, like sprinting. Our girl sprinting back to the palace to be like, what the heck's going on here? So as a symbol of gratitude, your father decided to pledge his alliance to ... Greetings, King of Shan. We have heard that you have been under much duress about the financial state of your kingdom, and so we have come bearing gifts. Your father, Father, You don't suppose it's me they want, do you? I just got my freedom back, and there's so much I want to do. And I believe this is Ujin speaking. Observe the mating habits of giant pandas, eat a scorpion. I can't do any of that with a stupid king breathing down my neck. No offense, father. Plus, you know I'm not into men, and I'm so sick of pretending. Father, again, deadpan expression, like, be quiet. Literally, be quiet. Those barbarians spared our lives, you willful brat. Just be grateful you weren't beheaded along with the rest of the Ulaan royal family.
So can I just say that, like, before I actually met first, like before we were introduced to First Princess Yujin, I was really disinclined to dislike her. I was like inclined to dislike her just because she ran away, and then Yuwa had to take her place. Like before I realized, you know, everything that was happening, and like that it wasn't her fault, like they ended up sending her away. I really like her character. Like I think she's I feel like she's like a modern woman trapped in like ancient civilization. And I feel for her. Like she's just, they know that she's just beautiful. Like they don't take into consideration the fact that she obviously has like a scientific mind if she wants to study the mating habits of pandas.
I thought it was because she was a little.
Yeah, no, and also she's gonna be visiting the harem for a different reason.
Yeah, let's not mince words. She's lesbian.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I mean I thought she was like just into sexy stuff because she wanted to observe the mating habits. Like maybe I didn't even think of it as a scientific mind, but you know the truth is I'm just so influenced by the Midnight Poppyland thirsty fans that you know I just see one thing only. Oh my gosh! Don't even ask. I'll tell you this after. Okay, remind me to tell you something after we complete.
But it's like amazing too that you have literally like one panel and like sure some backstory, but you can totally know what like the personality of both characters, like the father and the daughter. Even though this is the first time we're meeting them, she just does a really, really great job at just characterization in general. All the thuglets.
She reminds me very much of Erdine. Like she reminds me of Dean. And like just the fact that Dean seems like the type of person that is a free spirit and wants to do what they want to do. And this is very much how I think of Princess Yujin. Like she wants to do what she wants to do. She doesn't want to be tied down to any one particular person.
Exactly.
Also, she is very pretty, by the way. I know that's her reputation. She is very pretty.
Yeah. So then we get to Uncle, and he starts to say, "These gifts will be yours." Oh, sorry.
Also, if we notice, like everyone else in the Qianli family was beheaded, but she was spared again.
Yeah. Yep.
These gifts will be yours, but in return, ... And here's our girl running in, huffing and puffing, and she's like, "Father, how could you keep something important like this from me? Yuwa, not now. We have guests." And then, oh my God, Yujin's like, "Oh, baby girl."
Cute, right? I guess there's at least one person in her camp from her amongst her siblings.
And then we see like in that same panel, we have like Uwa barging in, the father scolding her, and her sister just kind of going like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" We also see this stranger with his back towards us, but is
long, silky black hair.
Long, silky dark hair.
And we hear from him in return, continuing on at Uncle's train of thread. ... Uwa and Ulaan stare each other. "I want her." Look at that. She's like in total shock, and he's like, "Hello, my love." So serious. All the smoldering eyes. That is a smolder.
Really? Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Gorgeous.
Same circlet he wore.
Same one. And then she's like, "Oh my God, what's going on? Wobble, wobble, faint." I don't know if I really like the fact that she fainted, but that's fine. It's cool.
I mean, she's basically seeing a ghost. Like she thinks he's been dead all this time. So I mean, that makes sense, I guess.
And then the sister is like, "My baby girl fainted. You stupid guards, do something." And then the father's like, Ujin, what on earth is wrong with her? And then here we have basically an empty space. This is a panel. We're gonna call it a panel. There's an empty space just to signify that now there's transition. And lo and behold, we are back to that tree that we thought didn't have flowers.
Nice.
So then we have their first discussion when they're reunited. He says, look at you, little doll. Look how ravishing you've become. You must have had plenty of suitors while I was gone. Who's the lucky man? Stop being so glib. What do you want from me? And then it's nice because right below that panel, we have translation as well. Uwa, which means jade doll or jade baby. So it's just kind of like a play on words for her name. It's a little nickname for her. And then he says, whatever I can get, plucks the flower from the tree. It's springtime, or at least almost springtime. And he says, don't you Eastern princesses have flowers in your hair all the time? Here you go. She doesn't know what to say.
Such a cute expression on his face. He's like,
He's
that
so happy.
chibi face. Yeah, he's like, it's like all the worries of the world fell away, and here he is with his love again. And he's, she looks quite upset, but he knows he's been alive this whole time. He hasn't had to deal with that. But Tina, I think it's might be your turn for the last.
All right, so I will take care of the rest of it. She looks so upset in this panel where he has this cute little chibi face. So then she
oblivious.
he's just like do. And she is pissed. Like she's upset. So then the next panel, like she just like smacks his hand. And then she's like, I thought you were dead. And she's like, everyone said you were dead. And he's looking down at her and she's looking down at the ground. And then the panel afterwards, like he looks really sad, like, cause he knows he had to keep the fact that he was alive from her. And I'm pretty sure in the back of his mind, like he realized that it was going to be hurtful to her, but she was very, very hurt, realized, like not knowing that he was alive. So then she goes, you could have sent a messenger, a letter, something. I didn't need much. I just needed to know that you were still alive. And you can tell like she's holding back tears and stuff, and she starts to cry. And he's just like, Yuwa, during the battle for our, and then like he explains basically like what happened. He goes, during the battle for our civilian city, 𝗪𝗲, we were vastly outnumbered with more than half our troops deployed elsewhere. And I was on the brink of death when they brought me back from the battlefield. And then you see a flashback to what happened. And he goes, during the battle for the 𝗪𝗲 kingdom, my body feels so weak. My vision is blurry. I can't see anything. And this is his internal thoughts while he's on the battlefield, bloody, fighting and stuff like that. And we see him, he's blood spattered. He's on his knees. He's got his sword in the ground. And he goes, my wounds aren't healing like they usually do. And that's the whole thing with King Asura, is that he's got this superhuman strength where he can fight for days on end, and he will always be the last man standing on the battlefield. So now he's like, what? And he's, breathing heavily. He's got blood on his face. And he goes, my eyes turn black. And he's looking into his sword and he sees that his eyes are no longer red. And even though in this episode, we never see his red eyes, in the very beginning of the episode, his eyes are colored. Well, they're not colored. They're just like kind of like white around the irises. And now they are black. And you see him go from being surprised in this sword panel to being like very angry in the next panel. And he goes, yeah, like he's just looking at his eyes and there's blood coming out of his eyes. And he's just like, so this is what they meant. So he goes, so this is what father meant. Punishment from the Okuru Inu of the North for showing kindness to the enemy. And then he says, Yuwa, and like, he's got like blood tears coming out of his face, but like, he looks so determined. Like, he's just like, you know what, even if they're not going to help me, I'm not dying. Like, I've got something that I'm going to go back for. And like, I feel like that's why, like, he says Yuwa, like she's like his lodestone. Like, she's his talisman. Like, she's what's going to get him through. Like, the fact that she's waiting for him.
I think it's really interesting too, the fact that the curse is broken because he shows compassion for the enemy, yes, but it's also like, I don't know, it's such a weird thing because it feels like a blessing, but the moment you start to show growth and improvement, you lose this thing that could be classified as a blessing because it prevents him from dying. But even though you're giving up this power, you're getting your humanity back instead.
Yeah,
and
that's such a good way of putting it.
yeah, my question was, does the war end because the curse is broken in particular? And it was something that I was thinking about, because maybe it was because he doesn't need this power anymore because they love each other, like the enemies love each other, that there's just no use for it. And it's just signifying like, hey, you know, here's a period of change coming, and a period of, you know, humanity is being restored.
I think it's very interesting if you tie this story back to MPL and the scene where like they were discussing ancient kings. King Asura was a very famous king. Like he basically like almost united, or he probably did unite that kingdom. And it's just so interesting that he was probably in the midst of doing all of that while he met his future wife and his queen. So it's such an interesting dynamic that he broke the curse that didn't go down to his eventual descendants in that same time. I just think it's so cool. Like it's such a well-told story.
I like what you said, Vita, sorry. Because yeah, I mean, I think that it makes so much sense in terms of like that it's a curse because he had to be unkind, and the fact that I feel like it's a curse that wanted it to break it. You know, they told him like, oh yes, you should be cruel, but like really we want you to be kind, and that's what that set him free.
I think it sucked in a way that like he lost that power in the midst of a battle. You know, like but it was meant to be a punishment. His kindness was meant to be a punishment.
That I think of it more as you have to find a different kind of strength, like bringing it. I don't know if you guys have seen Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yes.
But like bringing it back to like someone like Zuko, where originally his bending came
was
from
anger.
And the moment you strip that away from him and he realizes like, hey, I'm actually something more, you have to find a new grounding, something else to fight for. And I think what we see is with the panel that you were saying where it has like blood streaming from his eyes, he says 𝗚, and this is who is grounding him now. He has a new foundation for strength. It's not, you know, slaughter or war or defeating enemies. It's 𝗚, something really human.
I think that's such a great spin on that, and I completely agree with you. And I also feel like, you know, as opposed like the Okuru, you know, wanted like cruelty. They wanted him to be who they wanted, as opposed to Yuwa. She just wants the war to end. She wants him to use his strength for good, as opposed to using his strength just to bring sadness and misery. Even though, I mean, it can be argued that like his people never suffered that kind of misery and they saw him as a just king. But you can tell that in his actions and his kindness after this battle at Ōsli, he sends her sister back. He keeps her father, the king of Shan. Those were all kindnesses, and he did all of those kindnesses for her. Like his purpose was completely changed.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. I love Avatar: Last Airbender.
I'm glad you got it.
Okay, so I'll go back, and it says so he says Yuwa, and he looks very determined in this panel, and then it goes to a flashback of her, and she's smiling, and she's, you know, the snow is falling, she's wearing a cloak, and she says, you can end this war. And he goes, Yuwa, for you I will claim the lands, wait for me. And again, harking back to what we were just discussing, this is very much, she wants him to finish this. Like she doesn't want there to be war anymore. And then you see him get up, since he was in his kneeling position, and he's pretty much slaughters someone there, because like blood goes splattering everywhere, and he's determined to fight. And he goes, and if this is my punishment, I'll take it. And then the next panel, like he was basically explaining everything to her. So then he goes, so we ended up losing that particular battle because help didn't come in time. And she goes, touching story, soldier, but that doesn't answer my question. And he goes, oh, that, well, it was a battle strategy, getting the enemy to drop their guard by thinking I was dead. Forgive me, your highness. And he kind of looks repentant, but like in a oh, you're gonna forgive me, right? Kind of way, like
Sheepish.
yeah, like very much like a little kid that got caught with his hand in a cookie jar and it's just like, I know I wasn't supposed to be doing this, but I'm really cute, so you're not gonna be mad, right?
Yeah.
And then the next panel is him and he's just looking at him, he's blushing. And then she's also blushing with, there's tears coming out of her eyes because obviously she's still upset, like the love of her life just appeared. And he's telling her all of these things and she's going through a lot of emotions right now. And he goes, I'm not that weak little doll, have more faith in your man. And she's like, psh. And he's like,
yeah,
he's like wiping her tears.
It's a very romantic statement, but at the same time it's like, okay, so all those soldiers who died, it's just because they were weak. Like,
exactly.
Really? It's a little bit arrogant.
It's very arrogant, such an arrogant statement. And her, like, she's just looking at him like, really? And she goes, I have something to show you.
At this point, it's like, for sure, here's the baby, right?
Right, yeah. This panel, like after she says, I have something to show you, is my favorite panel, like ever. Like him with the little ears and her with, like, he looks like such a puppy in this, and she's like a cat, like, get off me. Like, he looks so, it's so cute. I cannot, like, this is my like screensaver for a while. Like, this is so adorable. So he's just like, does that mean you're not upset at me anymore? And she goes, how could I remain upset at a man that died? She's like, get off me, you're heavy. And I'm just like reminded of like those dogs that are huge that think they're lap dogs, and like they'll sit on you. Like, this is, I get that vibe from this. It's hilarious. So he goes, everything's peaceful now, isn't it? I spared your kingdom too. And she goes, don't push your luck. So like, it's just like, he's kind of like needling her, like, see, I did a good job. Like, your kingdom's still a kingdom. I brought your sister back. And she's just like, you're still like in the doghouse, kind of.
Yep.
So then she goes, wait out here, no peeping. And it's like, you see like a shoji, like, it's not a shoji screen, it's just a screen. And she's kind of like peeking behind it. And it's no-nos Yuwa, which is, I love it when Lily does like the no-nos characters, because they just look so adorable. And then he goes, I would never. And like, he looks like he's just like, hurry up. Like, I've been separated from you for all this time. And like, now you're asking me to wait. And he just looks gorgeous.
Behind the screen, undressed.
Yeah, he's just like, all right, just hurry up.
Yeah.
So the next panel, like, she's back here. She's getting changed and stuff. And then he's like, oh, change your mind. And he just like, he comes like, and obviously she's in a state of undress. Like, you can tell that she's not completely finished dressing. So then he goes, you really didn't need to put anything special on for me. And she's just like, oh wow, like, cause she's getting dressed, even though, you know, he's seen everything already, but still.
Right. But you know that's not what he means.
Yeah.
He's blushing and he's like, yeah, you don't have to wear anything.
Yeah, no, I know. His mind is completely like, where is the nearest horizontal surface? Like, you don't have to get dressed. Like, it's fine.
And she's like, Ulaan, let's bring it back down to earth. You're gonna like sit your ass down and let me get dressed.
Exactly. He's here for her not putting on more clothes. Like, he's just, I love it. Like, the interaction between these two is so adorable. And it's really nice to see that even after all this time, like, they're still picking up like right where they left off. It's not like weird or awkward. Like, they can still tease each other. They can still joke around with one another. And they still obviously have intense chemistry with one another. So then, like, he's all hugged up on her and he's like, even this little piece of cloth you're wearing is good enough for, and then he like grabs her, and you already know like where his mind is going. Like, he's ready.
Yeah.
So then there's a couple more points, and she goes, this is a serious matter, get out, you perv. And then he's like, oof. So like, she hits him for like she's like, get your mind out of the gutter. And she probably like does like a little elbow thing and like gets him to like leave her alone so she can get dressed. So now he's he's looking into a mirror and he's just like, well, what's taking her so long? Doesn't she know the best outfit on a woman is nothing? And the man still has his mind back in that tent the night before he had to leave. And she goes, she didn't notice that my eyes aren't red anymore. Or maybe they've always been black to her. Not everyone's sensitive to the supernatural. And this was actually a really interesting comment to me, because we know that she did know that his eyes were red, because she mentions it to the maids. She just says that he was sleep deprived. But I'm wondering if there were people that didn't realize that his eyes were red at all. But then she pops out and she's like, cough. And she's beautifully dressed in his mother's gown. I'm not sure what you would call this particular type of dress, but she's wearing his mother's dress. And he's like, he looks surprised. In the next panel, Ulaan looks very surprised, and he goes, it fits you pretty well. And she goes, thanks, I wasn't sure how that button. And then he just completely hugs her. Like, he's just like, oh, you look so great. And he hugs her, and she tells him, stop crying, silly, you're getting my hair wet. And he goes, let me be. I've been holding it in all day after seeing you. And it's just, I've said it before and I'll say it again, like, Ulaan's emotional availability is wonderful. And I genuinely feel like this would be Tora if Vincent hadn't like destroyed him at such a young age, like when it came to how controlling he was. So then he goes, when I found out that our camp had been raided and burnt down, I thought I'd never see my mother's robe again. I thought it was gone for good. And she goes, it almost was, Ulaan, but I saved it before leaving your camp. And then the next is a flashback of her snatching the robe and someone yelling, Your Highness, the tent is collapsing. We need to leave now. So like, even in the midst of something very dangerous, like, she remembered that this was incredibly important, and she ran back and got, his mother's robe. And then it goes, and I thought I'd never see you again. When I woke up and you weren't there, and like, they're just having such a touching, beautiful moment with each other. And she goes, dry your tears. I'm becoming for a king. You're behaving like a baby. And he goes, that's because
she's teasing
I
him.
am, right? She's like, you're such a baby. And then he goes, that's because I am one. I'm the baby of my family. And she goes, wait, you're the youngest? Me too. And he goes, I know that now, fourth princess. And then they, like, it's really interesting that he's the youngest and he became the king. And then like, they're just staring at each other, both blushing, and then they kiss, and it's just perfect. And then it's just a full length panel of them kissing, and she's on her tippy toes and he's bent down. And then we end with like a foretelling of basically how their life was. And it says, and so King Asura, or rather King Ulaan now, and his new bride, Queen Yuwa, lived happily ever after and had 3 babies, not 33. That's a bit much. The end. And that's his first bride.
That ending makes me wonder, did she first write 33 and then people corrected her?
Yeah, I was wondering.
Wait, I think that was a joke, actually. It was earlier in the story, wasn't it? I think that was a joke.
Of 33 babies.
I mean, I'd have 33 babies with him.
Nope.
Just saying. I'm just
two,
putting that
that's
out there.
enough.
Can we adopt 31 of them?
I mean, I'd at least try for 33 as many times as possible.
Try with birth control, yes.
There's one thing I wanted to mention that I just wanted to highlight. I love the culture that Lily brings into all her stories, both with Asura's Bride and Midnight Poppyland. Like, I think there's just something so incredibly beautiful about the fact that it's like, what makes Ulaan cry is seeing his mother's garment again. Like, it represents her like family, but more than that, it's also like history and legacy and culture at the end of it. This is a piece of his culture that she saved for him. And I wish I knew more, to be honest.
Yeah.
About the significance of clothing like that, because maybe it is tied in emotion, maybe it's ceremonial. I don't know. And I think it's just really important just to touch on the cultural aspects of pieces like this, especially now, like with a lot of really terrible things happening in the country. I am just so grateful that Lily is here, and sharing what I assume is her culture, her own culture with us. And I just want to say I appreciate it so much.
Very well said. I completely agree. I also think that it was the fact that like he gave it as a gift. It was obviously something that meant a lot to him, and he gave it as a gift, and she didn't discard the gift. You know, it could have very easily been, well, it was, tent was burning, like, you know, like, how do you expect me to go back and get, and she ran back and she got it. Even knowing in that instant, I'm not sure if she was aware of whether or not in that instant, if he was dead or not. She just knows that, you know, the camp was being burnt down. But if she did know that or if she thought that he was dead, she probably thought that that was like the last thing that he gave her.
Yeah.
And like, so she went and she got it, probably just to cherish it, just as a memento of what happened that night, and that she did spend time with someone named King Asura. But
I don't think at that point she knew he was. I don't think she was told yet that he died.
Yeah.
Also, so she probably was saving it for him.
It's the artwork is just gorgeous, and like you said, I love the fact that the style of dress is unique for each kingdom, at least for the two kingdoms that we were able to see. But they are very much, I believe, Lily's culture, and it's beautiful. It's great. You finally get to finish a webtoon.
Yeah. Is there anything special you want to do?
Normally we have bonus questions, so we can do that. Okay, so let me end this recording.